Hi, everyone. Welcome to our session, The Future of Work is Here. Are you? I'm Allison Baum Gates. I'm a general partner at SemperVirens Venture Capital. We're an early stage fund investing in healthcare technology, workforce technology, and financial technology, transforming the future of work. And I'm here with Ian White, co-founder and CEO of ChartHop. And we're going to be talking about the most important topic on everyone's minds today, which is what will the future of work look like in the near future? So, hi, Ian, welcome.
Hey, Allison, great to see you again.
Great to see you. It's an interesting time because about 5 years ago, when I started talking about the future of work, everybody said, I've never heard of that. What does that mean exactly? And over the course of the past year, everybody has started talking about it. And so everybody says, oh, that's so general. What does that really mean? So my first question for you, and I think what everybody would love to hear is, what does the future of work mean to you? And what do you think it will look like in the near term?
I think the future of work has been accelerated by this past year, right? I mean, we have all the transition to more remote and more distributed work, the transition to more transparent and more inclusive organizations, and the transition to more digital and more data-driven organizations have all happened uh, pretty much overnight, right? In probably the last year, there's been 10 years of acceleration towards the future of work that we're moving to. Um, I'm I'm broadcasting here from my home office. A year ago, we were very invested in being in person, and we felt like that was a really important uh, aspect um, of work communication and like building and finding the right office was a key decision for every business leader. And this last year has accelerated our understanding that we can work from different places, that a remote and distributed future is possible. And at the same time, as anyone who's had 12 consecutive Zoom calls can say, Zoom fatigue is real. And when there is the value of getting people together in person, people are going to want to do that. And so the future of work looks more flexible and looks more hybrid than ever. For our still relatively small organization, I think a ton of people have had just an incredible amount of flexibility from being able to work remote. We recently did an employee survey and people talked about the unbelievable freedom they had to work from anywhere. And um, that's an incredible new thing that I think was always possible, but the past year unlocked our imaginations and our understanding that this was even possible to do. But with the move to more flexible, more rapidly responding organizations comes the need for a better system of record, a better data strategy for the organization, right? Because if you're working spread across the globe in a flexible kind of model, you need to be able to understand your data and centralize and make collaborative and accessible uh, the state, the digital map of your organization. And that's what we've seen both for ourselves and for all the different companies we work with, is the need for that data-driven strategy that starts with the map of the organization.
Absolutely. It's amazing how the past year has really highlighted how much of work was really embedded in the invisible. There was so much information that we took in every day just by being around other people in our organization. And so now I think we've really unlocked this possibility of bringing more transparency to what's occurring and then leveraging that to be more deliberate about how we design our workflows, our culture, our community, and even our compensation strategies. So it feels like we're kind of at a crossroads. Things are starting to go back to normal, or at least that's on the horizon. People can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Um, and there's a critical moment for HR leaders to decide whether they're going to revert back to the way things were, going to continue along the same path of being fully remote and distributed. What tools do you think they need to make that decision, and what do you think it will look like? Where do you, based on your conversations, do you think most people will land?
Well, there's no going back to what was. I think that we may return to offices, but our understanding of what it means to work and collaborate has fundamentally changed. And so the decision-making process is going to be different for different organizations and for how they're structured and for what the needs of that particular workforce are. Um, the way to make any decision that affects a lot of people and affects the organization is to first understand the data. Understand if you have a 10,000 person organization, where is everybody working from right now? How many people chose to relocate or move to somewhere remote? How many of those people are in positions or functions where it is important for them to have some in-person collaboration? What about junior employees? What about new hires who are onboarding remote? A lot of people have spoken about the challenges of making sure that someone whose first job experience happened in the last year. How do we train that person, and how do we get them up to speed? And the answers are going to vary depending on the organization. I think a lot of orgs are going to land on hybrid. That's where it feels like a lot of companies are where there's still offices, there's still places to go to work together, but those offices might not be 5 days a week. Those offices might not be the kind of permanent desk setups and we might need to design offices in a new type of way where we understand that the base assumption is that not everyone is going to be present in the office. And we need to think about meeting rooms, right? How do we set up meeting rooms in a way that if there are 8 people in the office and 4 people on the Zoom call, those 4 people are participating and not excluded? We're going to need to rethink so much of what we thought we knew before. And I think it all depends on the org. For us, our choice has actually been to really embrace remote and distributed. And it was easier for us to come to that decision because the company started relatively recently. We've 4x'd our headcount since COVID started. So most of the team has never met in person. I was actually just down in Miami last week, and I met 2 team members, one of whom I had worked with in the office previously, and it was the first time we'd met in person in a year. And the other was someone I had never met in person. But I feel that it is possible to establish the kind of really strong workplace connections to your coworkers that over a remote environment. It just requires perhaps more attention and mindfulness, and it requires a data-driven, actionable strategy for if someone is a new employee, they just onboarded from their home office, far away from everyone else. How are they going to get the lay of the land? How are they going to understand who are they working with? What do teams look like? What is the structure of the organization that they just joined? Who has the knowledge about different key areas? Who has the skills or resources to help connect them to what they need to know? That kind of mapping of the organization is what, for many of our customers, has been this incredible onboarding and ongoing informational resource for their employees. And you need to have more investment in knowledge bases, in ways that people can retrieve data and retrieve information in a self-serve kind of way. And again, none of this is things that we were all talking about these things 5 years ago. And I think we're looking at these things for, we were looking at them for 10 years out, but it's all accelerated, and every organization needs to think through their strategy for the future of work, because 2030 is here faster than we thought it was in a single year.
Definitely. It does seem like the kind of traditional role of the office has flipped, in a sense, where it used to be that people go into the office to do their work and they socialize outside of the office. But in the future and today, I think in many ways, that's been reversed, and people do their work on their own and really only go into an office in order to socialize, collaborate, be creative. And that's really exciting because it creates this promise of mass customization. Everybody can work in the way that is best for them. There's this new level of flexibility, but that really does require transparency, because inevitably people do things differently. They don't know where each other are or who knows what, as you mentioned. So that level of transparency is really critical. In the past year, I want to touch on the topic of diversity, equity, and inclusion, because transparency can also be very scary for organizations who might be in the process of discovering inequity that they didn't realize was there. What role do you think data can and should play in diversity, equity, and inclusion? And what do you think that will look like as there's more light shed on how people are compensated, where they are, and what that means for the organization?
Yeah, I think it's really, really important for any initiative that you're driving, whether it's diversity, equity, inclusion, or any organizational initiative, to lead with the facts in the data. And more information is better for people than less, because when you hide information, um, people actually will fill in the gaps with their worst imaginings of what are you hiding, right? Why won't you share the numbers or the delta in compensation between men and women or between people of color? Understanding, let acknowledging as the first step that an organization may have work to do, right? But lead with collecting the data, looking at that data objectively, understanding where there are areas that there might be work to do, and to the degree that it's possible to do so, sharing that information back to the organization builds trust, right? There's just, and I think there's a fear around salary transparency, like broadly, right? Because compensation is often a very personal topic. It's a little bit of a taboo in American society to talk too much about money.
Mhm.
But I think it's really important to 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 achieve fairness. You want to be proceeding from the place that, even if you're not going to share your entire compensation with everybody in the company, you want to proceed from the framework that if you did, there would be no surprises, right? And at scale, that can be difficult to accomplish unless you really have fair and clear and transparent practices around compensation, and you have a single place where you are pulling all the compensation data together, tied together with demographics or other areas of the organization that you want to understand, so that you have a clear picture. Because if you want to, anything you want to manage or improve is best measured first. And
Mhm.
the beginning of inclusive, fair, equitable compensation strategy starts by understanding the data.
The the kind of remote work movement that's happened over the last year has introduced way more variables in terms of how people are paid, especially when employees have moved to different states. What have you seen, or what do you recommend? What's your perspective on how pay should be equalized across different locations, different work arrangements? There's a big, I know that you've done a lot of work on salary versus equity versus benefits and kind of wrapping that into total rewards and giving a proper view into that. So I'm curious what you think should be the norm and kind of what you're seeing based on the perspective you have with your customers.
Well, different organizations have different ways they want to approach these challenges. We certainly have a lot of organizations that are making adjustments on a location basis. On a personal level, for what we've chosen to do at our own company, we are not adjusting pay based on where people have chosen to move. That was, for me, I think it comes down to a question of fairness, of, equal pay equal work should be equal pay, right? And if two employees are working from two different locations and doing the same work, providing same value for the company, it seems to me that there isn't a strong basis to pay them differently, and so that's a choice that we've chosen to make. I think historically, if you are asking people to live in a high cost of living area and asking them to come into an office, then it makes a lot of sense to adjust that cost of living, to adjust the compensation to that local cost of living, because the company is actually making an expectation of that person. Like, this is where you're going to live. Like, you're going to live in New York and come to the New York office. That should be calibrated to New York's local cost of living. But in a fully remote or fully distributed environment, which again is not right for every organization, it's really up to the employee. It's where they choose to live, and what choices they want to make that make the most sense for them or their family. So that's the approach that we've taken personally as a company. But there's definitely a lot of companies that it does make sense for them to calibrate based on any number of factors, compensation. The key is that if you have a location-based compensation strategy, that compensation be very clear and transparent so that everyone understands precisely how those adjustments are being calibrated.
It's interesting that open sourcing of incentives places the responsibility on the employee to make decisions for themselves in a way that they perhaps haven't had to before. So one thing I'm really interested in is additional kind of learning and development, career support, helping people understand how to make those decisions and what it means for them within an organization, but also long-term as they think about their long-term opportunities. So that's an interesting place to watch. I think the venture capital community certainly believes that the future of work is going to be more project-based as opposed to time-based. So it will be really interesting to understand how organizations are making that shift as they reallocate their kind of compensation strategy.
100%.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Ian. Any parting words or predictions for the next 6 months as we navigate this crazy time in terms of what will happen, who will be responsible, key blockers? What would you like to leave us with?
I think that every organization now recognizes how important it is to have a great people strategy. And the people leaders, both HR leaders, key people leaders across the organization, the people strategy of an organization is that organization's strategy. And the work that HR and people leaders are doing to get more data-driven and more strategic is going to change the way we work for the better. It's going to create more collaborative, more inclusive companies that provide more clarity, more career laddering, and more transparency to ultimately create flexibility for people. So the work that everyone who maybe is listening to this is doing is really, really important. And our role is to help empower you and all of the work that you are doing.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Thank you so much for your time, Ian, and look forward to continuing the conversation soon.
Thanks so much, Allison. Great to chat.